This episode of the A.T.TIPSCAST is sponsored by TextHelp. Kids struggling with reading and writing? Get them the support they need with read and write software for the desktop, Google, or iPad. These proven software solutions help those with reading and writing difficulties, learning disabilities, or English language learners. Read and Write Gold text-to-speech software provides tools for reading, writing, studying, and research for students while they work within the common applications they use every day. Read and Write for Google provides support tools for Google Docs, PDFs, and EPUBs in Chrome, on PCs, Macs, and Chromebooks to make Google Apps for Education accessible. And iRead and Write makes reading easier and ensures accurate writing as students use their iPad for school, work, or leisure. Learn how the Read and Write family of products can help your struggling student by visiting texthelp.com or by calling 1-888-248-0652. That's 1-888-248-0652. Get a free trial of Read and Write Gold or Read and Write for Google today. Have students with IEPs? Take advantage of the Read and Write Gold IEP Special. Get 20% off a purchase of their online store with the code A.T.TIPS14, save 20. That's A.T.TIPS, the numeral 14, save, and the numeral 20. That's right, they've increased it from 10% to 20% off. This offer expires on June 30th, 2014. Get your copy today. Welcome to the A.T.TIPSCAST, where we delve into discussions about how educators can provide more options to students. I'm your host, Chris Bouguet. This is episode 131, recorded on March 29, 2014. This episode continues our look at providing accessible instructional materials to all students by sharing a few practical real-life stories. In the previous episode, we looked at one example based on a student in an elementary school. This time, let's take a look at a situation for a slightly older student. Here's story number 2, which, of course, shares quite a few AT tips as well. In the final month of the school year, a parent of an 8th grader contacted the case manager at a middle school with concerns about accessing content the following year in high school. I met with the middle school teacher who also requested support with the student's writing goals. In an effort to stay focused on the topic of digital text resources, I've omitted the recommendations that were made to help with writing. Here's what was suggested to help with reading and accessing digital content. Dear Case Manager, during our meeting, you explained that the student has a long-term career goal of becoming a veterinarian. You explained that she demonstrates the ability to read and comprehend text, although making inferences is still a struggle sometimes. She also benefits from hearing text read aloud. You also mentioned that she has access to her own personal iPod Touch. What follows are recommendations and resources to help support the student. 1. Text-to-speech for acquiring content. You explained how the student benefits from listening to text as it is read aloud. She could use the text-to-speech function in Read and Write 11, which is available on every instructional computer in our school district, and it's available for free at home as well. Using the text-to-speech function, she could listen to any block of digital text to acquire content-related material. 2. Search the Loudoun County Public Schools AT.TIPS DIGO group for ebook resources. There are a number of additional ebook resources that can be found by searching the LCPS DIGO group. Doing a search for ebooks will result in many resources that provide free digital text. You can find this by going to bit.ly/LCPS-AT DIGO ebooks. A search for reading will result in a large number of resources to help with reading. You can do these searches by going to bit.ly/LCPS-AT DIGO group. 3. Provision of notes prior to lessons, with the understanding that the student could be highlighting, sketching, or otherwise marking important information. A digital version of the notes could also be made accessible to the student from teachers who use digital materials as part of their lessons. A version of Active Inspire is available for people to use at home. Promethean Planet allows people to install a free version of Active Inspire, the personal edition, on their home computers. 4. Stories in audio format. Because acquiring content via audio is a strength for the student, consider providing her access to fiction and nonfiction using an audio format when possible. The public library has a wide selection of stories in audio format. The following are some free audio story podcasts as well: nightlightstories.net, drfloyd.com, the Barefoot Books Podcast at bit.ly/barefootbookspodcasts, the Story Nori Podcast at storynori.com, and the Cast of Wonders Podcast, castofwonders.org. Once you know which classes she's going to be taking next year, the teachers of those subjects might find podcasts that correlate to the content as well. For example, if she ends up taking Earth Science, she might utilize the Let's Get Down to Earth Science podcast at bit.ly/Let's Get Down to Earth Science podcast. Podcasts in iTunes and iTunes U. iTunes is free software loaded on at least one computer in every classroom. Search iTunes for a topic, either a school subject or of personal interest, such as animals, and a variety of results appear. These results can be filtered by media format, such as podcasts or iTunes U, which is short for iTunes University, which outlines free multimedia content per course. Using her personal iPod Touch, she can also access the podcast app and the iTunes U app directly. Stories in multimedia formats. Our school district has purchased or subscribed to a number of resources that provide stories in multimedia formats. A few include the following. A. The Start to Finish Library by Don Johnston. Our school district maintains a number of different titles for different grade levels. These books with read-aloud functionality are available for checkout via the library system. B. Tumble Books and Tumble Cloud. Tumble Books, and specifically Tumble Cloud, is a collection of online books. The sites also offer quizzes, games, book reports, and lesson plans associated with the stories. Tumble Cloud offers audio versions of many different titles for young adults. The username and password can be shared and used with families of students within our district. Consider creating the materials. Perhaps student organizations, clubs, or other students looking for volunteer opportunities or extension activities would be willing to record chapters from the book. Some speech-language pathologists invite students who are working on articulation goals to record themselves reading to improve their production. A student working on articulation goals could be recording text that our student needs to have in an audio format. Be sure you don't distribute the material beyond that single student who needs it, and maintain a copy of the source material. Please share this email with the other members of the IEP team. At the next IEP meeting, the team could consider these recommendations for implementation within the IEP. If the IEP team thinks that a recommendation is necessary for a free, appropriate public education, then it should be written as an accommodation. If the IEP team thinks that a recommendation is a good idea, but not necessarily necessary for a free, appropriate public education, it can still be implemented, it just doesn't get listed on the IEP. At the beginning of the next school year, the new case manager at the high school contacted me with a question about how this student could access digital text. I forwarded her the previous summary of recommendations, the ones you just heard, and she had some questions.
Chris, thank you for the info. I did look at the site under the audio text you sent. Some seemed geared more for the elementary level. Do you have any ideas where I could find adult high school versions? I have checked with our library, English folks, Amazon, etc., and I'm running into a blank wall. I am learning the students' needs, and I'm trying to honor the accommodations which were put into place last spring. Are there other options? I am not entirely convinced she needs this accommodation, as her reading level is fairly high, and most of the novels will be read in class, but access to an audio version of the text was written in as the accommodation. I am not sure how to proceed on this one, since she does not qualify to receive materials from AIM, Virginia.
I replied commending the teacher on her appropriate understanding that every student with an IEP, and really every student in general, has the right to receive materials in a way that is accessible to them. She clearly understood that it was the school district's responsibility to get the materials in a format deemed necessary for the student, even though the student did not qualify to get those materials from the state institution that provides them. Then I provided her with the following recommendations and resources. I'd start with Tumble Books. Go to tumblebooks.com and select Tumble Book Cloud. There are many higher-level reading materials. Once there, you will see tons of ebooks. There is even a section of just audiobooks. The ebooks open in a way that a student could use text-to-speech to listen to them. I like the strategy of trying to read the story first and then, when stuck, using text-to-speech for support. But to meet the accommodation, all of these stories technically can be read aloud using text-to-speech. There are search tools to help you sort by reading level, which is listed for each title. And there are many titles, including stuff like 1984, A Night to Remember, Huck Finn, and more contemporary titles too. I'd be shocked if the English teacher couldn't find something there to use that would not only meet the students' needs, but meet the needs of all of the other students as well. There are also many sites that have free ebooks in the public domain. Zorba, a publisher, has a nice guide on searching for ebooks at bit.ly/Zorba ebook list. Again, if you can find the digital text, chances are the student could use text-to-speech to read it. Here are just a few sites that offer free ebooks. Manybooks.net, openlibrary.org, bookssshouldbefree.com, onlinebooks.library.upenn.edu, online-literature.com, gutenberg.org, bit.ly/literacyzone, bit.ly/lit2go, that's the numeral 2, lit2go, and dailylit.com, where you get a short blast of text from a public domain story sent to your email daily, so you can digest the text in small chunks without having to self-regulate that yourself. Finally, if you're thinking of proposing an amendment to the IEP based on new data for the student or just to update the wording, try to be as specific as possible. The IEP team should look at what specific materials she needs in order to access the curriculum. It is then the case of the case manager and the IEP team's responsibility to find, acquire, or otherwise create those materials. For this reason, it's encouraged that the IEP team really consider the question of need versus nice to have. Identify what specific materials need to be provided. For example, if a science teacher only sort of kind of uses the science book to guide her class, picking one or two chapters, but really using other digital resources instead for the remainder of the year, then the question becomes, does the student need the entire science textbook in audio format, or just those one or two chapters that the teacher really relies on? If the science textbook isn't really used in the curriculum, or if it's just as an additional optional resource, then is it really necessary to provide that in an audio version? Ultimately, that's a decision made by the IEP team. Your best option in every situation is to work with the general education teacher to help him or her select instructional materials that are available in a digital text format, because in most cases, this will be accessible to most students. Again, this won't just help your student, but all students, because they'll all get to use the digital tools to help them listen to, annotate, and ultimately better learn from the text. Whew! I hope all those ebook resources help you out. Before I log off, I wanted to remind you that I've got a number of presentations coming up, including going to the Texas Assistive Technology Conference coming up in June. I hope to see you there. Until next time, may all your interventions be inclusive, may all your strategies be supportive, and may all your texts be provided in a digital format.